Welcome to Spooky History. In today's episode, we're having a fabulous time with that old trickster, the god Loki. This is not a cash grab tie-in for the new Marvel series. Disney Plus. One of the best-known Norse gods has to be Loki, a notable trickster and master or mistress of disguise. Loki was an Aesir, along with Odin, Thor and Frigg, but was originally a Jotun, an ungendered race of frost giants. His father was the Jotun Fabauti and mother was Laufey. I apologise if I get most of these words incorrectly pronounced.
What an idiot.
Loki's brothers were Helblindi and Billista, which means Hellbind and Stormflasher. Coincidentally, also the characteristics of the blind god Hodor. Oh, Hodor. Hodor! And the thunder god Thor. Loki was adopted into the Aesir when he became blood brothers with Odin. Do you remember Odin? When in bygone days we mixed our blood together, you said you would never drink ale unless it were brought to both of us as a poetic Edda. Yes, sure, blood brothers. Loki was a flirty god and put it about a bit, no judgment here, and he had quite a few offspring. With a giant called Angerboda, mother of monsters, a son, Fenrir, a wolf, a daughter, Hel, goddess of the underworld, obviously, and Jormungand, a serpent that surrounds the world. According to the short Voluspa, Loki, aka Lopt, gave birth rather than Angerboda by eating a heart he found, roasting on a fire. Lopt was impregnated by a wicked woman, from whom every ogress on earth is descended. Some of his tricks were a mixture of childish mischief and spite. He cut the hair off Sif, Thor's wife, while she was asleep, mainly because she was proud of her hair and Loki was bored. There seemed no other real reason. At a feast thrown by the sea giant Aegir, Loki got annoyed that he was expected to sing the praises of his host and retaliated by killing two of Aegir's servants. All the other gods told Loki to kindly and politely go away, but instead he insulted all of them in painstaking detail. The only reason he stopped was Thor threatened to smash his skull to tiny pieces with his hammer if he did not shut up. Thor's hammer is notable for being fairly compact, more girth than length. Giggity. This too was because of Loki. When the dwarves were making it, Loki turned into a fly and bothered the hammer maker so much by buzzing around that he gave up and left the handle short. Loki turned into a fly again to steal the necklace Brisingamen from Freya to give to Odin. His jokes could be hit and miss. He went on a long journey with Thor that involved turning dead goats into live goats and then eating them, making them dead goats once again. Another notable goat tale involved the giant Skadi, who wanted to avenge the death of her father. The gods tried to placate her by instead offering her choice of god as husband. She picked the one with the nicest feet, I mean, you could just get that with a Pornhub subscription these days, who turned out to be sea god Jord, rather than her preference, Balder. Skadi wasn't pleased, but said she would not seek revenge if the gods made her laugh. Loki's attempt at humour involved tying one end of a rope to the beard of a nanny goat and the other to his testicles. When the goat jumped, Loki obviously squealed. Inexplicably, Skadi thought this was hilarious, and she decided not to kill all the gods. Aww. By all accounts, her marriage was an utter disaster, however. She should probably have held out. One time, an itinerant builder offered to make the Aesir a huge fortified wall to keep invaders out. In exchange, he wanted the beautiful Vanir goddess of Freya, the sun and moon. Quite a pricey wall. Donald Trump could have probably got it cheaper. He would only get his reward if he could build the wall in one season. Understandably, the gods wanted the wall, but they did not want to pay for it. Unfortunately, the unnamed builder had a massively strong horse, and it looked like, with his horse's help, he was going to make the fortification well before the allotted period. The gods asked Loki to come up with a plan to stop this happening, and so Loki did. To distract the stallion, Loki turned himself into a beguiling mare and let the horse chase them around the paddock all night, thereby holding up the building work and saving Freya. Though it turned out that the builder was a frost giant, and the gods decided that that cancelled any deal they had anyway. Should always read the small print. They did not make deals with a frost giant as a rule. A bit late though, because all the frolicking and a wild stallion resulted in Loki getting pregnant with an 8-legged grey horse that subsequently got ridden around by Odin. Loki disguised himself as a salmon when he was escaping from the gods after one particular egregious incident. This guy is a little bit nuts. But they quickly caught him. While fishing one day, he killed a god called Otter, who had disguised himself as an otter by smashing his head with a rock when he was eating a salmon, presumably an acquaintance from Loki's Being a Salmon days. Another time, a giant called Therm stole Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, and would only give it back if Freya was sent as a bride. Everyone wants Freya. Yet again, nobody asked Freya whether she was okay with that, but the gods were generally not happy about that either. Thor was particularly upset. Loki persuaded Thor that the best solution would be for Thor, dressed as Freya, wearing the Brisingamen necklace, to go in her place with Loki as handmaiden. Cue a makeover montage with Thor trying on all the dresses in the shop. At the wedding feast, Thor ate entire animals and drank 3 casks of mead. Hopefully none of them were Loki. The bridegroom, expecting Freya to be a bit more demure, was a bit confused by this, but maid Loki assured him that the bride was just hungry from being awake for 8 hours in excitement of the forthcoming nuptials. Thor managed to get Mjolnir back as the hammer was placed in his hand as part of the wedding ceremony, presumably after it was finalized. So, Thor was definitely married to the giant before he got his hammer back and proceeded to smash up the place, but not his new groom, while still in his wedding dress. Perhaps the most distressing trick of Loki's was the part he played in the death of Balder. Odin had several sons by various mothers, including Thor, Vali, and twins Hoder and Balder. Balder's mother, Frigg, was determined her son would be invincible, so she made sure nothing in any way, shape or form could harm him. She left out mistletoe, either because she forgot about it or because it seemed harmless and she didn't think it would be of any threat. Years later, Loki heard about all of this and decided to make an arrow or spear out of some mistletoe just to see what would happen. Loki gave the mistletoe spear to the blind god Hodor, who didn't realize it was anything other than an ordinary weapon. The gods had a jolly good game where they would throw things at Balder just to watch them bounce off. It was Hodor's turn and he threw his arrow, which went straight into Balder and killed him straight away. Odin was so mad that he impregnated a giant called Rindr, who immediately gave birth to Vali, just to avenge Balder's death. The intended target was Hodor rather than Loki. The prose Edda says Vali was Loki's son, so it was very probable Rindr was also Loki. Loki's daughter, Hel, promised to bring Balder back to life if everyone cried enough. At the funeral, Thor kicked a dwarf into the pyre and several other gods threw themselves in grief. Pretty much everyone mourned except for a giantess called Thok, the Old Norse for thanks, who also, almost certainly, was Loki in disguise. Loki disguised himself as an old woman on a number of occasions. It was definitely the go-to. So Balder stayed dead. Later, at a scold, the ancient Norse equivalent of a roast, Balder's mother, Frigg, who at one point was almost synonymous with Freya, accused Loki of living as a milkmaid for 8 years and having lots of sons. Loki countered that he knows Frigg's husband Odin practiced cider or women's magic, and all that entailed. Heavy innuendo ensues. After getting no real response from Frigg, who told him that the past should stay in the past, Loki decided to tell her he was entirely responsible for the death of Balder and set Hoder up. Admitting it was not entirely Hoder's fault made it even worse, as it meant Frigg had lost 2 blameless sons. Loki and Frigg had form. In the poem Lokasenna, Loki accuses almost all the female gods of promiscuity, and he is particularly scathing about Frigg, which is a bit rich considering how many partners Loki had. Loki then insulted the gods one by one, saying to Freya that he knows she slept with her brother, the confusingly named Frey, and farted on him, telling the god Jorda that he knows the daughters of Hymir used his mouth as a piss pot, mocking Tyr's missing hand and generally behaving like an utter arse. If the discovery of Loki's part in Balder's death and the subsequent death of Hodor was not the final straw for the gods, all the insults certainly were, and they decide to put an end to all of this nonsense once and for all. Loki was chained to 3 rocks in a cave with a snake above his head dripping venom. Vali and one of Loki's other sons, Narfi, were turned into wolves by Odin. Vali tore Narfi apart and then proceeded to blind Loki using Narfi's entrails. This seems logically impossible, but it's what it says. And Loki is supposedly still there, tied up in a cave, with Narfi's mother, Sigyn, Norse meaning victorious girlfriend, catching the snake venom before it gets into Loki's eyes. Every time she goes to empty the drip tray, Loki writhes violently, so much so that it causes an earthquake. Loki will be there until Ragnarok, the fall of the gods, though arguably the fall of the Norse gods was a long time ago. So maybe Loki has been on the loose for quite some time, which would explain the last couple of years. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Spooky History. You can find us on most social media at Spooky Hist Show, and you can support us with donations at paypal.me/noisyghost.end. If you have suggestions for future episodes, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and please do have nightmares. And honestly, I don't think Marvel can do anything nearly as batshit as the actual history. I wish I still drank. Thanks for watching. Okay, this is The History of Loki by Elise Harris. And there were a lot of, difficult words to say.
Name Disney.
Oh my god, what a typo. Welcome to Spooky History.